Welcome friends, welcome to Simzuu. Now you see the production of the medical certificate, especially when it comes to courts of law, it goes to the root of the matter. Sometimes the opponent or the opposing party or the management says we want to cross-examine the doctor. The worker has produced a medical certificate. They say this is under suspicion. We don't believe such and such a thing had happened. So we want to cross-examine the doctor. And then the doctor is summoned in the courts of law and he is cross-examined on the medical point. One day I remember that there was a doctor, he wrote up a medical certificate that the patient is suffering from some disease, which was in the medical language. Now that was put in Google by the management, and the management understood that that nomenclature meant that the patient is suffering from typhoid. Now what happened, incidentally, the HR manager was ill and he was relaxing at home. So he said, let me use the computer. He put it in Google, found out that he is under typhoid. But to his surprise, when he was reading the file, he found a medical certificate which stated, the doctor had stated that this patient is fit to resume duty from 1st of July and the certificate was dated 30th of June. The HR manager started thinking that I'm just suffering from a cough and cold and I'm not, well in my senses. A lethargy has come, some creeping malaise has been there in my body, a body ache, body temperature is there, I cannot move out, and this is, doctors say it's going to go on for 3 days. Then how come a person who is suffering from typhoid be fit as a fiddle and fresh as a daisy in 1 day or 2 days? So he had a suspicion and that certificate was challenged in the court of law. Doctor was summoned and the doctor was taken to task, and then ultimately the doctor had to apologize in the court of law. The court also very took a strong note out of this and passed strictures in the judgment. Okay, casting a doubt on the medical certificate will differ from case to case. Again, the same typhoid example. Casting a doubt, generally you have to believe, but casting a doubt on that will, you will have to find out. Casting a doubt is very simple. I suspect this. You don't need to think also. But why do you suspect this? There should be some cogent reason also. One sleeve application of rest of the health factor, you find something that how many days of rest is needed. Health factors have to be seen. Everything is to be, the medical certificate should be a self-speaking one. It should not be vague. It should be specific, to the point. What is the malady? What is the treatment? What is happening? What is the prognosis? Everything should be reflected. Now, friends, another question comes up. In India, here are so many pathies, they say. It's allopathy and a naturopathy, and then Unani medicine is also something, and homeopathy is also there, and Ayurveda. And we brag of and we take pride in telling the world that yes, Indian Ayurveda and Indian medicines have, transcended to such a stage that some diseases which the West considers, or the Western doctors consider incurable, have been cured by Ayurveda and homeopathy and this and that, and by Indian indigenous medicines also. Point is, what about the medical certificate by a Vaidya? A Vaidya, or at some places they call Ved also. So, or Vaidya. So, medical certificate, there is no reason to suspect, Honorable Court say, that it is a false certificate and it is not genuine unless it is particularly challenged on some factor. And what is the factor of the challenge? That has to be seen. Of course, that will go with medical history. And we all understand that medical history will differ from person to person. If you give me a penicillin injection, I might get a reaction, you may not get it. So the personal reflex also differs from person to person. The response, the medical response will again differ. And then the doctor is aware of this. The government certificate of a Vaidya can be asked to be produced. Government certificate means the practicing certificate. As for lawyers, you have a sanad, or as for doctors, you have a practicing license. Likewise, it is well within the right of the management to ask for a practicing certificate. Who authorized you to practice Ayurveda? Are you a BAMS doctor? And then all of those things will come to the fore. Registered medical practitioners, you are aware that when India became independent, there was partition, people came across the borders, this and that, and then there were no medical colleges also. And that is why people started putting up degrees as RMP. RMP means registered medical practitioner. Then there were quacks also in those days. And the question is that these registered medical practitioners and doctors is a later development. But earlier days there were RMPs. So the question was whether the certificate of an RMP was valid. In those days, in 47, 50, earlier days of our independence, after our independence, it was valid. But today you say I have produced a certificate from an RMP or a quack, that will not be allowed also by the management, and the management will discard it. They'll say, no, you get it from an authorized medical practitioner, maybe Unani, maybe homeopath, maybe allopath, whatever. Just because a doctor is a homeopath, the certificate cannot be believed. I mean, homeopathy, some people practice homeopathy, but then you have to be, that degree was some LCEH. And then there are homeopathic colleges and they are authorized doctors, and homeopathy has got a huge range of medicines. Of course, the therapies differ, and as I told you, I'm not a medical doctor. Now, one more factor, friends, we cannot overlook that the nomenclature or the name of a disease in allopathy is different, and the name of the same disease in homeopathy could be different. But then this has to be clarified by the doctor in the medical certificate. And then with what he practices, sometimes some funny situations arise when the doctor is a homeopath, but what he prescribes, the medicine, is an allopathic medicine. Question whether it is allowed, good, bad, or ugly, I'm not aware. And then, but somewhere in the newspapers I read that it is not allowed, that an allopath has to prescribe allopathic medicines, and more so, if at all it reacts. Some patients have died by giving some different medicines. A homeopath giving an allopathic medicine, the patient died, then he is taken to task. So it's in the fitness of things that the doctor also gives the medicine which he is allowed to. Now, there cannot be an insistence all the while that bring a certificate from the medical or from the civil hospital. A worker comes up, he produces a certificate from the private practitioner. Management says he is your friend, that private doctor is your friend, so go to the civil hospital and bring a certificate. There cannot be any insistence. Why do you not believe a private doctor? Private doctor is to be believed. When he is having a medical authorization to give a medical certificate, he is to be believed. So you have to believe him. All the while management cannot insist that you go to the civil hospital. And friends, you are all aware that in every town, every big city, there is a civil hospital. That is a sarkari hospital, we can say. Doctor should make a clear distinction between short and long illness. That's what we discussed. A small ailment and something bigger or about to be bigger, that this will take a long period. Say, for example, in COVID also, some got okay in 2 days, and for some they were in hospitals for some 10 days or more, whatever. It depends from person to person. Whether an employee was ill or not is not a question of, is a question of fact. It's not a question of guess. It's a question of fact which is to be proved by evidence. And then sometimes the lipid profile is seen. Some more investigations are there. X-rays are seen. MRI reports are seen. CAT scans are seen. This is, as you delve deep into the subject, the accuracies go on more, which the doctor only can answer. Our purpose is to see whether the medical certificate is bona fide and authentic. Now you see, the signature from the sometimes the signatures are such you cannot decipher anything. Of course, they say that you always require a Sherlock Holmes to understand and decipher as to what does the doctor really mean. His handwriting is something too great. There are jokes made out of it, but the question is that the signature of the employee. Once a management said, they confronted the employee, where is your signature on the medical certificate? Well, that is not a sine qua non. That's not a requirement itself. The workman need not sign on the medical certificate. Yes, doctor's signature is a must with all the ingredients which we are discussing: symptoms, malady, pre-treatments, amount of rest. Because under the standing orders, friend, you see, we can ask for a fitness certificates, and even otherwise the employer, even where standing orders are not applicable, employee can insist that I want to have your medical certificate. Tomorrow you die on the shop floor, so I suspect something. So it is okay, it's a part of the game, so long as it's done bona fide. Now, question is suspicion, suspicion, suspicion. How do you suspect? Well, friends, let us not forget the cardinal principle of law that suspicion cannot substitute proof. Howsoever suspicious you may be, it will not substitute proof. That suspicion is no proof. So, at the first blush, any medical certificate is to be believed unless you think that the devil is in the details. You have to believe a medical certificate. If it's given by a doctor who is authorized, you have to believe it. Now, one more thing, you should have reasons to disbelieve also. Why do you disbelieve? Where are the reasons? And there is no provision of sick leave. Say, for example, there is no provision of sick leave in the Factories Act. But this doesn't mean factory workers do not fall sick or whatever. They do fall sick, and that is why they are entitled to sick leave also. And when there is sick leave, there is a medical certificate. And when there is a medical certificate, there is a doctor. So everything has to be in place. Once sickness certificate is relied upon, or the medical certificate is relied upon, then the medical certificate, filing of the medical certificate becomes a must. The worker, your total theory hinges around, or the underpinnings, the foundation of your leave is because you were sick. That's why you went on leave. So the moment you say, I am sick, then you have to give a medical certificate. Sickness, say for a couple of days is okay, minor things, any management. But for something major, management may not accept, because ultimately management too wants fit people to work in the factory. Otherwise, tomorrow something happens on the shop floor, then compensation and so many things might arise. Now you see, the employer sometimes also hold free medical checkups. Benevolent employers, or it's a policy of some companies that every 6 months we are going to hold a medical checkup, and everybody is going to be screened for at least some ailments to find out. Workers, of course, they are a part and parcel of that, and there is no harm in getting checked also. And then earlier the better some malady is understood that I am suffering from this ailment. That say, once upon a time, I remember, when the blood pressure catches a person, it happened with me. It's hard to believe. Come on, me, how can I be there's be blood pressure and a patient of blood pressure? No, of course, it wasn't much. But then healthy schedules and exercise, doctors have already informed us, friends, that will keep us fit. Now you see, the under ESI Act and under the ESI scheme, the corporation issues a slip or the information which is to be given to the management as a proof of the sickness. So you go to a ESI doctor, he fills in that slip ultimately, or the form at other places, and then he gives it. Now the management is supposed to believe this. There is, ESI doctor is an ESI doctor unless the first answer is you believe it, unless you are having reasons to disbelieve it. Okay. And then the ESI certificate, as I told you, is to be believed because there are no other reasons to doubt it. Otherwise, if you start doubting each and every ESI doctor, well, that's not in the fitness of things. That's not correct also. And why do we disbelieve them? Just because you suspect something. As I told you, suspicion never substitutes proof. Proof is proof, suspicion is suspicion. Yes.